When we're young, we have an amazing, positive outlook about how great life is going to be, but somewhere along the line, we forget to dream and end up settling. Join Up Dots features amazing people who refuse to give up and chose to go after their dreams. This is your blueprint for greatness. So here's your host, live from the back of his garden in the UK, David Ralph.
Yes, hello there. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Join Up Dots. It's great to have you here. It's like you're in the room with me. It is the day after the longest day. It's all going downhill now. You're going to be writing your Christmas lists and getting it all sorted, arguing with your wife about putting the heating on and all those kind of things that lead up to the cold bit. So, yeah, we're halfway through the year. Where has it gone? But yesterday in the United Kingdom, we had all the Druids. We had all the Druids down at Stonehenge with the summer solstice, and I drove past there, and every year I feel like stopping the car, running up there and going, these are not the Druids you're looking for. And it's just going to be the most funny Star Wars joke that I could ever do, but I never get the courage. So next year I'm going to go up and annoy the Druids, and hopefully in a little way I won't annoy the guest today, because he's a man who's got up early, he's ready to do it, because he quite simply, He's on a mission. He is on a mission, and it's not a surprise because he's overcome so much. He's lost nearly 100 pounds, ran a marathon, dramatically changed his diet, and created an approach to help others live a better life every day. He calls it the do-a-day method. And through his book, flying off the shelves of Amazon and other good bookstores, and his thriving online business, he now shows us the steps to doing this too. Now, changing our lives by small, doable steps leading to overcoming the impossible, instead of tackling huge challenges head-on, which just wear us out. Now, this wasn't a process that was obvious to our guest right from the start, although it is true that although ingrained in the corporate world, he certainly had a foot in the entrepreneurial motivational camp right from the start. Leaving Bowdoin College with an AB in economics, Chinese and philosophy, he started work as a senior associate consultant at Liberty Mutual before going back to school to get an MBA in business, and from then on he tackled many different positions for a multitude of companies, leading to holding the executive vice president, head of claims for Hiscox Insurance down in Atlanta. And you can see the ambition clearly as he climbed quickly the corporate ladder, all the time balancing the work ethic with keeping his personal and physical side on an even keel. He's faced challenges in life such as obesity, depression, work stress, the responsibilities of parenthood, the potential of losing his wife to illness, and more, and he struggled like anyone else. But as we see on Join Up Dots, every time through that struggle he learned the secret to not just overcoming any individual challenge, but creating a life of achievement, happiness and harmony. Do a day will free you of the burden and judgment of yesterday's choices, while relieving you even of the pressure of what tomorrow may bring, by teaching you how to identify your true motivation and how to use that to focus on what you've got to do today. Do a day will help you change your life. So is he now 100% entrepreneurial, or does he see a combined approach to his workload going forward? And what has been the biggest learning from living the life that he's had so far? Well, let's find out as we bring on to the show to start joining up dots with the one and only Mr. Brian Falchuk. Good morning, Brian. How are you, mate?
I'm doing really well, David. Thank you. Thanks for having me. And that intro, if I wasn't doing well, I certainly would be now. That was, I think you've covered everything I've ever done in my life.
I know.
Awesome.
So we can just sit, open a beer, we can just relax, we maybe sit in our underpants and just be relaxed, two men together. We don't have to record a podcast now, Brian. It's all out there.
Yeah. The one thing I'd say is I'm probably just having water because I don't drink, and that makes me kind of boring, but I can still be silly. So I'll be there with you. You may not even know I'm not having alcohol, but just to be technically accurate.
No, you don't have to open it with me. There is nothing worse, though, Brian. There's nothing worse than, I'll be honest with you, people that say that they're going to be exactly the same when they're not drinking, because they're not. I went on a big sober bit. I'm not a great drinker, but when you're out with people drinking and you're not drinking, they're just idiots, aren't they? You just can't fit in, can you? Even if you try, Brian, you just look at them and think, oh, just grow up, don't you?
I think there are moments where I feel that way, maybe. But I'll be right there with them, and if nothing else, you're getting some good stuff to use against them later, in not in a bad way, but in a funny way. You know, you get all that humor, and you'll probably remember it, whereas they may not. So I look at the positives in it. But the worst thing is when you get someone who doesn't drink, who stands there being preachy about it. So I just don't care either way. That's my choice for me. You can do as you please, and let's just enjoy the time either way, right?
Absolutely. So let's talk about what you're here for, the do-a-day method. And tell us what that is about. Why is it such a simple approach to changing someone's life?
Yeah, it's something that grew for me over time, and I had this moment of clarity. It was 2011. I don't want to take the whole conversation down, but it's a pretty strong moment. My wife has a chronic illness. It was all coming to a head then. Our son was 2 years old, and she was essentially on her deathbed. Her doctors had given up. They couldn't stop this downward spiral she was on. And if you did the math on how things were going, she really only had weeks or maybe months to go. And that, I mean, if that doesn't, hit you like a ton of bricks, I'm looking at my son watching his mother die, and looking at myself where I was at in my life, wellness wise, happiness wise. I was dying too, just at a slower rate. And that's when it all came together, is, to see your child seeing that, and what my responsibility is to him and the impact that's going to have on him. Everything became clear for me in that moment. And that's why I say it was a specific day, because I remember it exactly. It was June 30th. I woke up July 1st, 2011, completely different, because I had that really clear purpose and that clear motivation in him. And then I used that in Do a Day. That's the sort of foundation. Now, what is it in the philosophy itself? It's about, as you said, it's free yourself from yesterday without the burden of tomorrow. So, we all make mistakes. We make bad choices. We do things we wish we didn't do. That's called being human, and that's okay. So today, I don't need to sit here in judgment of everything I did wrong yesterday. Yet we do that kind of thing. You feel guilt. You feel like you did something wrong at work. You're going to get in trouble, whatever it may be. Or you said something to someone that you shouldn't have said. And so now you've got all this angst because of where the relationship is. And you feel that all today as if it was still going on. And you pay a price today. And the choices you make, the decisions you make today, because of how you're feeling about yesterday. And by the same token, we do that with tomorrow as well. So, my weight loss example is a good one, because I think people get that. First of all, a lot of people are in the same boat with weight loss, but they understand it if they aren't. Where if you have 100 pounds to lose, which is roughly what I had the first time around, and I had 2 bouts of needing to lose weight, that's just a huge amount of weight. That's enough that people would say, hey, I'm not even going to start. Or maybe you get started and you're like, you've been killing it at the gym for a few days and making all these great food choices, and you step on the scale and you still have 99 pounds to go. And it's like, I can't keep this up. This is too much. So you're looking at all that you still have to do, and you're making a decision today about the impossibility of it. But the trick is, you're not actually losing those 100 or 99 or whatever pounds today. You're just doing what you need to do today towards that goal. And that's the other piece of it, is so we free ourselves from yesterday, so we're not stuck in this pattern of judgment. And at the same time, we're not just totally, snowed in by all that we still have to do, because we're not doing any of that right now. And that freedom allows you to make the right choices today from the right kind of mindset. And the sum of those todays becomes your future path. And that's where success really comes from. And I've been living that way since that moment in 2011 very clearly, and helping other people do the same. So I've seen it work in so many different settings. And that's what sparked me to write the book is, I can coach people 24/7. I'm still not going to get to change as many lives as I want to. So I need to get this message out more broadly.
Well, you come on the right show, because we could call it Dot a Day, really, because with Join Up Dot, it's very much about, you screw up. I almost swore then. You screw up, you make big mistakes and stuff, but they're the learnings. They're the ones that we should look back on and go, brilliant, thank God for that. But of course you don't. You sort of mope at the time. You think, it was terrible and stuff. But you can't move forward without the screw ups. I don't care. You would be within that comfort blanket of only being able to do what you can do. You've got to be able to move forward and screw up. The analogy is, no kid ever starts to crawl and then goes, this is hard, I just sit there for the rest of my life. Do they? They crawl, they hang on furniture, they get up, they fall over, they get back up, and then suddenly they're walking, and we all applaud. But once we get to adults, we kind of feel that we should just be able to do this stuff. Yeah, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I'm going to create a business. It's going to do amazing. 6 months later, you haven't earned a penny, and you give up on it. It's just not right, is it, Brian?
Yeah, I mean, and it's funny you use that crawling and walking example, because I say that in the book, and it is really interesting. Being a parent, I get to watch. My son is free of so much of the responsibility we have as adults, and so I think responsibility is actually that it's that linchpin that changes things for us. He doesn't see impossibilities. You ask a kid, like, what would you do with this random thing? Like, there's this hanger. How would you play with it? And they're like, oh, I'm going to make a rocket ship out of it. You ask an adult, and they're like, I'll hang clothes on it. And I'm like, okay, well, what if you can't hang clothes? They're like, a jacket. It's still in the same. They've bounded everything by responsibility and impossibility, whereas kids just see, well, there's no reason to stop. Just because it didn't work before doesn't mean it won't again. Just because I fell 17 times doesn't mean I'm always going to fall when I try to take a step. I'm just going to do it again. And that freedom is really a beautiful thing. So I'm trying to capture that and put it back into our lives today. Because when we know better, we do better. That's a quote from Oprah, but it's very true. Well, why can't you just go on and do better? Whether you've failed before or not, you can learn from that and grow and try again, maybe in a different way. So
are you growing your business totally? Are you still corporate, or are you totally entrepreneurial?
I'm both. So well, that obviously makes me not totally entrepreneurial. I'm doing both. I'm not one who just does one thing. So I have a very engaging health and fitness practice for myself personally. I exercise and wellness and meditation. That's all a big part of my life. And I have a really full job that I happen to love. I work in an amazing company that just shouldn't exist. Like, the culture is so incredible, the opportunity we have and how we're seizing on it. I mean, we're growing over 30% in an industry that's basically shrinking.
And what is the name of the company? Best. What's the name of the company, Brian?
It's called Hiscox. It's an insurance company, UK company. I run claims for the US business. It's been amazing. So that's a hard thing to give up. But at the same time, I'm passionate about do a day. And I spend a lot of time on planes, and it would be wrong of me not to make that, more useful and productive. So I wrote the book with all of this time I had on planes, and I got that out. And so, I'm still pushing the message out. So I'm doing this on top of my job, on top of the health and wellness thing, on top of it being a parent. And I should clarify, my wife is still alive. So I'm also not just a parent, I'm also a husband. So there's a lot going on. In a perfect world, I would probably just be doing the book and everything that comes from the book, the coaching, the speaking work, and all that. But I would still do probably 90 other things, because it's just who I am. I'm driven. I think I would have been ashamed or maybe feeling egotistical to say that before, but I'm not. I define myself in positive ways, and I think that leads to more achievement. So I feel like I'm a driven person, and I achieve things, and you can't just sit back and have an idea and not try for it. I don't work that way.
No, I agree with you. And funnily enough, I used to work for Hiscox a few years back. Don't anymore. Yeah, obviously. The London-based office, I was a sort of outside consultant for their training. So I used to train Hiscox insurance people in their processes. So we got something fantastic in common. We got something in common. Yeah. But I disagree with you when you say that you're not 100% entrepreneurial. I think you are. The fact that you're willing to do what needs to be done, the fact that you're willing to juggle so many plates. I see it time and time again when people say, I want to be a business owner, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. And I hate that word. I hate the word entrepreneur, because to me, it's like some kind of super talent badge of honor. And it's not. And I say this all the time. It's just the ability to juggle stuff and move forward and take risks and try things. There's nothing big on that. So I think the fact that you're doing that and you're doing this as a side hustle and you're being there for your family and your kids and you've got the time management going on and you're getting up early for podcasts, and you are 100% entrepreneurial, because entrepreneurial is the mindset. It's not the sort of badge, is it?
Yeah, well, all right, I'll take that. I'll allow that. one of the things I didn't say is I'm also an advisor to a couple of startups. One of them
now
that
you're
I work
showing
with.
off, Brian. Now you're showing off. You see?
No. My point. Maybe that sounded like that. My point is that's where the alcohol is kicking in, right? The point that I'm trying to make is actually, as I look at the founders there and how that is, I mean, if you're in a real startup and they're in very real businesses, it's real stuff, real investors, real opportunity. That is consumes your life 24/7 kind of thing. So when I say I'm not 100%, that's really what I mean is I'm still, I work a lot of hours in my core job. So for me to compare what my entrepreneurial setup is to theirs, that's where I see the disconnect. But I'll take your point.
Well, you should do, because I'm the host of the show, Brian.
Yeah.
And the thing we realise is not to argue with me. So when you decided to do this, because one of the things I'm always interested in is that connect between the person who wants to do something and the family who's quite happy for dad to go off to work and then come back and be like all the other dads. Did your wife sort of say, yeah, go for it? Or did she say, like my wife, don't you think you've got enough on your plate already? Do you need something else? Aren't we okay as we are? Did you have those kind of conversations, Brian?
We had both of those. So she knows how I feel about the message. She knows, she's watched me come up from our basement after doing a conference call. Our basement's not a dungeon. It's a nice basement. So I'll do a call with someone I'm coaching and she'll see my eyes and she'll know like, this is what he's really passionate about. And I've been talking about that for years, that if I could just find a way to do that all the time and maintain the roof over our heads and actually be able to eat 3 meals a day, I would do that in a heartbeat. So she knows that that's where my passion is, and she sees how much it inspires me. And frankly, helping others, if you don't help yourself through that and you don't learn from their stories and their epiphanies and growth, then I don't think you're really contributing as much as you could be to their life if you're not going to take back as well. So there was that side of it. And there was you sleep 15 minutes a day, you travel a ton, you're always going, it's too much. On this one, she didn't bring that up as much, but she was more like, you should cut out all these other things. Why do you still exercise? I did a marathon in 2015 and it was more like, why are you doing that? That's foolish. It's too much time. You're putting your body through too much. So it wasn't so much on this particular thing because she knew I really had to do it. It's you need to cut other things out.
Yeah, you've got to get lean, haven't you, in your processes? I had my, third burnout? Yeah, I probably had 2 burnouts in corporate land, which I put down to different stuff. And then by doing Join Up Dots, life was going to be brilliant. It was going to be relaxing. It was going to be fun. And I got to a point that I burnt myself out as well. And then from then on, I'm a totally different person. I am so chilled out with as you say, I am Mr. Do-A-Day, really. I leave everything behind that went wrong the day before, everything that went well, I try to sort of keep with me, but I'm never going to go back. And one of the things I was aware of, as my wife kept on saying, was look after your body. Look after your body, be aware of your body. And I would just plow through and I'm all right. I'm still young. I can do that. But now if I feel sort of really sluggy, as we say, just feel like, I'll take a day off and just sit and watch Netflix all day and just doze on the sofa. And I don't consider it to be a waste of time now, Brian, which is the big mindset
sounds amazing.
shift. I now think to myself, actually, I'm being good to myself. I'm going to be able to do better work tomorrow because I'm having this day just relaxing. But that's only come in about the last 6 months. I really just kept on ploughing through. And funnily enough, while I'm on the preach, that since I've started taking more care in myself and being more relaxed and not forcing it, better things are happening. It's just kind of finding its easy way through. You find the same thing then?
Yeah. And I mean, you have to give your brain the space to figure things out. And when you are going, 1,000 miles per hour, you don't always get that chance. And that, whether it's your brain or your skeleton and your muscles, whatever it is, actually, we do need those recovery periods. My son is into building with Legos and these things called Connects. And there's times where he'll get to a point where he can't figure out how to make it work, or he can't figure out the instructions. And he's like, can you help me? And I'd love to help him. And I will. It's not that, I'm not willing to help him. But I'm always like, well, why don't we just take a break? Like, let's go have a snack. Let's go, play outside or something. And when he comes back, he always figures it out. And that's just such a nice, simple, fun reminder that actually our minds do need to just take a breather from time to time. And I've never been good about that with my body. And you talk about not drinking. There was an incident 2 weeks or a week, just over a week ago, that should have involved a lot of alcohol, but for some reason didn't. I chose to do this sober anyway. Let's just say I've never done a handstand. And after this incident, I have still never done a handstand.
I thought you were going to say swinging or something, Brian. I thought it was going to be a swinging story with alcohol.
No, it's not like that.
Ah, damn.
No, but the whole right side of my body got pretty badly smashed up. And there was a lot of laughing going on, and I was laughing as I was stuck on the ground. But that means I had to stop running and working out. And normally I would get really upset with that. And I'm upset with, the pain and all that. And I wish that didn't happen. But I'm sleeping in an extra hour or so in the morning, which is not something I've ever done. And as a percentage of sleep, that's a huge change for me. So I'm just sort of relishing it right now. It's like, I'm not actually going to go back to being 100 pounds overweight. I'll get back to working out in a week or two. That's fine. My body needs this right now. And actually I feel fine. I don't suddenly not fit in all my clothes. All of the fears I've always had in the past about like, oh, if I eat this one thing, it's all going to fall apart. This nonsense. I'm a different person. I mean, also just being vegan, it's not easy for me to put on weight. I don't work out to keep my weight down now. I work out because I enjoy it. So I don't have the same fears and insecurities about it. And I'm quite comfortable in my capabilities that if I were to put on 5 pounds or whatever, it's really not an issue. I can take care of that. So I'm just, it's the anticipation of the future piece of it. I'm not worried because I'm not dealing with that right now. I haven't put on any weight yet. I don't know if I will or won't. So why would I sit here today cowering, and like, oh no, what if this happens? No, just get on with it. Have a bit of rest. You need it. You recover and move forward.
Well, let's play some words now from a lady who's quite famous, and she says some wise stuff. Here's Oprah.
The way through the challenge is to get still and ask yourself, what is the next right move? Not think about, oh, I got all of this stuff. What is the next right move? And then from that space, make the next right move and the next right move. And not to be overwhelmed by it because your life is bigger than that one moment. You're not defined by what somebody says is a failure for you, because failure is just there to point you in a different direction.
Now, she's talking about getting quiet as well, and we've been talking about, looking after your body and resting and stuff. But when I had my burnout, just recently, I sort of said to this guy that I used to work with, I said, I went through a really rough time and I was literally falling to pieces and stuff. He said, why didn't you reach out to me? I would have spoken to you. And I said, I don't know. He said, but to be honest, you wouldn't have listened anyway. You would. Do you think you have to hit it yourself? Do you think mentally, no matter who's around you as a support group, if your wife's saying, don't do a marathon, Brian, and your kids saying, just lay in bed for another hour, until it's you making the decision, do you think it's going to fall flat? Is that when do a day really comes into a powerful process, when you're deciding to do a day?
Yeah, I do strongly believe in that. So what I do in the book what I don't do in the book is give answers. And I don't do that in the coaching work I do either. I give challenges and questions, and I try to spark introspection so people find it themselves. Because I had gone through in my obesity journey plenty of other people trying to get me thin, and I wasn't ready for that. I hadn't worked through the reasons why I had put on weight and was still putting on weight, and why I felt depressed and all of those things. So for someone else to tell me, you need to do this, you need to do that, if I do it, I probably won't stick with it because I don't have a reason for doing it. I have their reason for doing it, and that's not the same thing. So what I try to do is help people on that journey themselves. I always say I don't do anything for people's lives. I don't change anyone's life. I don't, I'm not going to make you better. You are, and I can help you do that. But it is going to be you, and you are going to have to put in the work. And that's a tough thing for a lot of people, is that level of introspection, that level of self-challenge. I just read an article by one of the founders of Instagram, and the title of it's from The Guardian. It's like, you have to be willing to disrupt yourself. And he's talking about business. But I think that completely applies to our personal lives as well, is you have to be willing to disrupt yourself. You have to be willing to look within and really challenge, why am I doing these things? What really drives me? If you don't find your true motivation, you're not really going to stick with that better path. So, there's this great TED talk from this guy, Simon Sinek, about your why. And it's, again, a business context, but he's saying people don't buy what you sell, they buy why you sell it. And I think that applies to you as well. You're not going to buy what you're doing. You're going to buy why you're doing it. And you're going to continue to do it if you've invested in and fully accept that why. And that's a personal thing. That's not a someone else telling you kind of thing. You can get support. You can get help. You can get people to help talk you along the way. And I'm a big fan of that. So yeah, you could reach out to your friend, or you could go to a support group or get a coach or a mentor or a family member or whatever. I think that's a great idea. And you need to do the work yourself.
Because that Simon Sinek, I watched that TED Talk, and for a while I really bought into it. But now I kind of think that that's too hard a question for people to answer. People don't even can answer what they want to do, not even why they want to do it. It's like 2 steps down. It's almost the answer you find. I could answer it now because I've been doing something for, 3 or 4 years. But at the beginning, I just couldn't. Do you think that's too big an answer to look for?
Well, with that attitude, it is. No, I'm kidding. I say that all the time. Like, yeah, if you say you can't do something, guess what? You're not going to be able to do it. It is a really hard thing to do, and it can take years. So I think what makes it seem impossible to people, or like too much, is because we don't work that way anymore. Everything is instant. Everything is right now, and everything's easy. There's a life hack. There's an app. There's a whatever to just give you the answer. This isn't one of those kinds of things. And so it is probably too much with that traditional way that we go about things. But if you're willing to actually invest in yourself, and I mean, let's ask that question, why wouldn't you be? This is you, and this is the rest of your life. You're the one you're living with forever. So if you can't take some time to really question and challenge and discover yourself, which is probably the most rewarding thing you can do personally in your entire life, then you're going to be missing out.
Yeah, but that comes with self-value, doesn't it? And that's a big missing part as well. People don't value themselves.
Yeah, but they're intertwined. So I think the journey to discover your why includes a journey to value yourself. And I can't say that I valued myself fully when I began and when I found that motivation. I do now. So I think the two things, you can have one before the other, and it's great if you start from a place of valuing yourself. But I wouldn't wait for that to happen. It takes work to get to that too. As a people, compassion is something that's absolutely missing from our lives. And it's not just about compassion for others, which is where so much of the focus is on. But you can't expect to have compassion for others if you stand in judgment of yourself all the time. And you have to start with compassion for yourself, or you're not going to see it in other people.
So what is the difference between do a day and, say, the compound effect? Because they seem to be very similar. What would you say would be the difference to doing one small thing every day, but consistently, that builds up to something?
Yeah, so I do think that there's an overlap there because of the way that the series of days compounds into an overall success. So I think there's a similarity there. I really think it's just the mindset. So a bit of what Oprah's talking about, and I think she's sort of touching on both of these two concepts, and I talk about it in the book as well. Where I'm a bit different is really just how you're looking at today. It's not a like just grit through it and do this, because if you can just do this, then it'll add up. And it's not that. I don't think that's sustainable. And that's where the difference between do a day and one day at a time comes in. I think one day at a time is a very just, bear down, get through it. It's only one day, and, just sort of deal with the pain and move on because it'll add up. Do a day is proactive. That word do is a verb. It's an active word. So we have to take actions and choices today. And the day part is about fencing off before and after, so you can focus on right now. And it's not about just getting through. It's about making active choices from a point of clarity, because you're not clouded by all this judgment and fear. And actually looking at it more positively for what you're doing right here, right now. And the compounding happens to happen versus focusing on like, I need it to compound. It's just, if you can do today, it will add up and you don't need to worry about that. So it's a bit more free of the pressure while also being proactive and clear on what you do today.
Because I had a conversation a few years back. I've recorded, about 900 podcasts now, give or take, probably touching 1,000. And when I was about 500 in, a guy said to me, do you think your business should be sort of bigger by now? Do you think it should be here? Do you think it should be there? And I said to him, it's just where it is. And he said, yeah, but does that not bother you? You've done 500 shows. And I said, no, it doesn't bother me in the slightest, because if I'm going to be a podcaster, I've got to do 500 shows. I've got to do 5,000 shows. It makes no difference. And whether I end up at the top of the pile or halfway down, that's never going to occur unless I record shows. That is my thing. And that is my compound. The more shows I do, the more chance somebody has to listen, the more chance that those people might say to somebody else, this guy is all right from the United Kingdom, come across. But unless you keep on doing it a day, do a day, you're never going to get there. But I never beat myself up that the last show wasn't as good as the one that I hoped it could be. I never beat myself up that there's one that now has got lost in the midst that I wish I could bring to the fore. Can't. I just move forward constantly, because I agree with what you're doing totally, and I love the concept of sleeping well at night, knowing that the next day it's a do-over. Yeah,
and you're not worried about, I have to get to this many before it's valid, or before I'm a podcaster, or before I'm this or I'm that. That's not going to change how you're going to interview your next person. It's not going to change how people are going to interact with you. If it's like, oh, this is only his 800th or 1200th or whatever, it's not his 5,000th, so I'm not going to get as much out of this. The number makes no difference. You're just listening to this episode, you're recording this episode, and you're still going to make this one as solid as you can, regardless of what number it is or isn't, or what happened on the last one or what will happen on the next one. And together, they will all be, 900, 1,000, whatever the number is. That's impressive by any standard, and the content is impressive. So it doesn't matter what the number is or needs to be.
When you look back to your education, I'm just looking at the introduction and I can see that you studied economics, Chinese and philosophy. To me, there was a kind of inbuilt interest in the human psyche. It's not a surprise that you're doing what you're doing now. It's more of a surprise that you're working for Hiscox Insurance, to be honest.
Yeah. So if I went back in time, I would not have seen it at all. As you're saying it, it's like, well, yeah, that's blatantly obvious. Why didn't I put those pieces together? You join up dots for me on that. Yeah, it does make sense. And the reason why I studied Chinese was actually the personal challenge and the interest in like, it was about the people side of it and the mental side of it. It wasn't about like, oh, and you can look at the fact that I studied econ and took Chinese. It's like, oh, he's just preparing himself to do business in a global economy. No, not really. It was more about the mind and humanity. But I think it was just happening then, and I was less conscious of it. But as I look back on, it makes complete sense. And then you layer in the philosophy, and it does all tie together.
Well, when does Brian have his bad moments? When do you lay on the bathroom floor going, it's not going where I wanted to be? Because no matter how we say it on these shows, we still have our dark moments. We still have our non-shaving, sitting in our dressing gown moments when we think, I'm just going to leave the curtains drawn. I'm not going to face the world today. When do you have your sort of bad times?
Yeah, no, and so I just had a high school reunion, and I gave a friend a ride home. And she was challenging me. She's like, you're putting out all this stuff and it makes it sound like everything's perfect, and that's fake. I said, well, I'm not saying that everything's perfect. There's a lot in my life that's difficult, and I absolutely have those moments. And it's not that it's fake, but I am trying to share with people how I get through, rather than, oh, I'm stuck and just wallowing in that. So my moments are, I just had one the other day where I was getting takeout. It's Father's Day in the US. There was some restaurant that supposedly had fathers eat free if you get a meal for your kids. So I got my son something, and I went to get me, and they're like, oh, we don't know about that deal. So I was like, all right, well, there's one thing that's gone wrong. So fine, I'll get whatever instead. And, it's not super expensive. I don't really care. I like their food. I'll just get it. And they screwed up my order pretty badly. They didn't have one of the ingredients, and then they didn't say anything, and then they made something wrong. And this is just like one thing after the other. And about 20 minutes had gone by for what should have been 3 or 4. So I'm like wasting the little time that I have with my family before I had a business trip this week. And I got really frustrated with that. And I stewed on it, and I didn't end up getting any food from them because they couldn't make it. So I got the food for my son, but I stewed on it the whole way home because I was like, I just lost all this time, and it's all gone wrong. And I knew it was going to go wrong because they always screw up every time we go there. And, it's like every time we go there, that's a series of past things that have happened that I was living right now. And I was all riled up, and it's like, hang on a second. I got a hot dog for my son. Like, really? Is that enough to like, I was like bright red. I also had a sunburn, so it could have just been that, but it was probably the emotion. So, I'm sitting there, like, I can feel it in my arms, like the way I'm holding the steering wheel of my car. And I'm just like fuming. I'm like, I'm about to go home to see my wife and son, and I'm going to bring this into the house. I need to control that. And guess what? Locked in the door, and I didn't control that. So I was still visibly upset and agitated. It's a hot dog. I had a veggie burger. That's what I couldn't get. And I have veggie burgers in the freezer. So somehow the world will continue and I won't starve to death. But I was so riled up. And they were like, oh, hey, you came back. They were just totally chill about everything. And I'm like sitting there like shaking with anger. And my wife's like, what happened? I'm like, it doesn't matter. I know it doesn't matter. I don't know why it's getting me so riled up, but it is. And she's like, okay, what happened? And she talked me through it. And what got me through is actually just that moment of validation. Just being like, I get it. I get why you're upset. Yeah, it doesn't matter, but I totally understand why. It's just like, yeah, it's not completely irrational, maybe slightly irrational, but I let it have its moment. I let it come out. I was fully aware of it being a complete waste for me. Like, it didn't make any difference to them. They still, didn't sell that second bit of food and whatever. Like, they didn't care. It's just affecting me, and I was still going to eat. And my son was still excited because he got the hot dog. And it's just like, what a complete way. And that's such a non-issue. That was so trivial. And I was like shakingly agitated by it, which is pathetic. Now, luckily that lasted about a total of an hour. And I took my son up to give him his bath for the night. And he's just like, he's a little kid and he says the most ridiculous, hilarious things. And so within about 2 minutes, I was just like laughing at what he was saying and a bit of laughing at myself, and it dissipated. But what a waste of an hour. And like, what kind of hormones and chemicals did I release into my body because of a veggie burger I didn't get, if we want to be honest? Like, I'm not that hardcore of a vegan that I'd be like, I'm going to go protest and chain myself to a tree.
I have to say, Brian, listening to that story, I would have grabbed you and walked you out of that place and put you to bed early. I would have said, yeah. Grow up, sir. Grow up. It's a bloody veggie burger. But I know what you mean, because I a few years back, I had what I thought was a heart attack, but it turned out to be extreme stress. But I had all the symptoms. And so I had to learn to calm myself down. And the doctor put me on these beta blockers, and I took them for one afternoon. And I've never taken drugs or anything, and I'm not a big drinker anyway. And I didn't like the way I was feeling. I felt like all spaced out. So I thought, right, I've got to calm myself down mentally. I've got to calm myself down. And I got to a point that I was so calm that no matter what happened in our house, it didn't bother me. And my wife, it used to annoy me. She could say, your son's just been knocked down by a car and he'll be in a coma for 6 months. And I'd go, okay, no problem, we'll deal with it. And she didn't like me. She needed some kind of passion. And that was quite hard to balance the passion, because what you're showing sort of passion in the wrong way. And when you take that all out and you become almost like a Buddhist monk and you're not showing anything, that's difficult for people to understand. And I actually had to change that. And fortunately for me, I found my passion through Join Up Dots, where I can sort of blaze big, get it all out, because then I can sort of sit calmly again. It is really strange that you have to do that. But if you hadn't have done that, you the next thing would have been sort of building up and building up, building up. So it was good in a way that you got it out your system, because you realised it was a bit stupid, and then you didn't sort of take it out of your kid when he did something that he didn't deserve later on.
Yeah. This is obviously an absurd example, and there's more serious stuff that goes on. As I said, like my wife still has a chronic illness. There's very serious stuff that we face on a regular basis, and it defines and consumes a lot of our life. So, my friend from high school would probably still be mad at me for sharing that example. She's like, really, a veggie burger? You've got real stuff that you're dealing with, and that's what you share? But it's just because it's recent, and it's kind of foolish. And it's to show that, look, I'm human, even something as simple as that. Like, of course, someone dies or something, you get upset, and that's a tough thing to deal with. But I'm not so zen that even something as simple as a veggie burger not being made right and given to me is just a total non-issue to me. So
yeah, but what you're talking about, Brian, once again, you're talking about compound effect. You're freeing yourself from the compound effect. You're freeing yourself from letting that build up until you have a heart attack. You're just taking it out on the first level. So what you're doing, you're taking do a day to its perfect concept, really, that you're just dealing with that issue, walk away from it, move on to the next thing. You're almost taking do a day to do an hour, and just having an hour and then, a bit stupid and sort of move on, instead of letting it build up.
Yeah, you've just named my next book, right?
There you go, and I will have a forward. I'd love to have a forward. I keep on having people on the show going, we're going to make this film and we're going to have it all about a sexy UK podcaster, or we're going to write this book and it's all about this podcaster that goes around killing people. I never see anything. Never see anything, Brian, so I will keep you to that. Well, what I am going to keep to as well, I'm going to play the words from the legend of Steve Jobs, who's no longer with us, but he certainly left a legacy. Here's Steve Jobs.
Of course, it was impossible to connect the dots looking forward when I was in college, but it was very, very clear looking backwards 10 years later. Again, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something, your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever. Because believing that the dots will connect down the road will give you the confidence to follow your heart even when it leads you off the well-worn path, and that will make all the difference.
So when you look back, obviously we've joined up so many of your dots already, but can you see the path? Can you see the path from the young Brian all the way to now?
Yeah, absolutely. And that the joining isn't always a lot of clear straight lines. That path can move around. It ends up maybe looking like the Big Dipper a bit instead of just a single straight line. But it is really clear from my earliest memories, my family, my parents' divorce, what led to the obesity, every step of the way, the things that I went through, because they shape who we are and we carry that forward, that led me to a number of things. But there's one person in high school, the physical education teacher, who, being a fat kid, I wanted to get out of sports, and the way you get out of the sports requirement is you have to do the PE class, and he doesn't take it as a cop-out. He takes it as a serious chance to teach people about wellness. I was very lucky for that, but he's the one who introduced me to a different way of looking at exercise and wellness, and that was a huge dot with a very strong connection to everything that's happened since then. But I don't, I get questions from people about, I do advising for people who are looking at going to business school, and they ask me about, what school they're applying to and whatnot. And they're like, oh, do you wish you had gone to this school or that? And I said, well, I loved the school I went to. I got a ton out of it. But also I have my wife and my son out of that because I met her there. So why would I wish to have gone somewhere else? Or, you went to Bowdoin College, you wish you went to this one. It's like, well, again, let's look at everything that's happened. I'm not going to take any of those dots out of that pattern because I'm very good with where I am right now. I love what I've achieved. All the ups and downs are worth it. And I wouldn't take anything out of that, because then, it's like the butterfly effect. You go back in time and squish a butterfly and then mankind never exists. It's like, I don't want to take any of those dots out. They all are completely intertwined, and I'm good with that.
I think so as well. Other than a drunk girl in Spain once, I might remove her from my timeline, but everything else, I think I'd leave exactly where it is. And it's do a day, isn't it? Just move on. Don't dwell on anything, because dwelling doesn't help, does it? But we do. No. We just dwell.
No, you're absolutely right. We can analyze and learn, but dwelling is a different thing. Dwelling is sort of wallowing without any of the growth.
So just before we send you back on the sermon and the mic to have a one-on-one with your younger self, what kind of people do you think would get the most from your book?
So the worst answer is everyone, but what I've come to learn is that it is pretty much everyone. I think there's an age range, so I think you can be too young to be ready to go on that journey. And I don't want to say what the age is because I did an interview last night with a 25-year-old podcaster who blew me away with his understanding of himself. Generally, I think that might be too young, but apparently not always. So I'd open that up. I think it's about when you're mentally, emotionally, and maturity-wise ready to have that self-introspective journey. So it's somewhere probably in your 20s. For some people that may come earlier, for some that probably comes later. And then there's a point where you might have given up and you're in the back part of your life and you're not going to change because you're not willing to. Now, I think that age can be irrelevant. I think that you can make a change at any point. So it's less about the age than it is about your willingness and openness to do the work to change. So I'm open to it being at any level, but I've found that there's a sweet spot where people are more open to looking at themselves and making a change. But then it really does apply to so many different life situations. And I talk about a number of my own in the book, the things that I've used it to apply to. One, just to give sort of case examples for people to maybe it's similar to what they're facing. And so they're like, okay, I see exactly how to apply it to my case. Another is just to be a bit vulnerable and open. I think that's really important as human beings. Vulnerability allows people in and allows them to connect. So, there's relevance and vulnerability in sharing my story. But what I found since I put the book out is at least every day, at least once a day, I should say, I get a message from someone who has read the book and is taking the message in to change their life in some situation that I hadn't necessarily contemplated yet. Or they've gone through something and the book has opened them up to understanding what they went through in a different way. And they've sort of come to peace, some sort of major loss or major event. So there's things that I wasn't sure it would apply to. Like I almost lost my wife. I've talked to people who have lost their spouses in their 30s. It wasn't like they were 85 and it's sad, but it's, the end of life and you come to grips with it. It was like we were just planning our life together. We were talking about having kids and I lost my wife, or I lost my husband. So very different situations. I've talked to people who have gone through divorce, people who are going through cancer, and that's, I haven't experienced those things. So I wasn't sure how well it would apply and haven't coached anyone in that space yet, but I'm hearing from people who are using it there. So I hate to be so generalist, but I'm finding more and more places that it directly applies. And I have yet to find one where it really could not be used effectively.
And is there sort of an independent film on the cards and a wider platform speaking tour?
I would love for all of those things. My next step is to push on the speaking front. So we've got a few pitches out there. I'm trying to, I had to do a vision board with a mentor that I work with, and it was one image. And it was just, I took a scene from a TED conference and I just superimposed myself kind of awkwardly in Photoshop on top of the guy who was on stage. That's where I'd love to head with it. And, I was saying on this show last night that I was doing is all of these things that when I say it, I'm always half waiting for the person to laugh at me. But I'm not doing a TED talk now. I'm not sitting in the woods on a couch with Oprah right now. So if I don't say and take some actions to try to do any of this, it's still not going to happen. So it's not happening now. I have zero to lose by putting it out there, but I'll be damned if I'm not going to take the actions I need to take to try to make it happen because I firmly believe in it. You use the word passion. I have passion for what this is and the lives that it can help. So I need to get this out there in a variety of different ways.
I tell you what, nobody will laugh at you, Brian. Absolutely nobody will laugh at you. And if they do, they're just looking at their own situation. And that's it. They're not realizing that they can do these amazing things. And everybody out there listening, and you can do amazing things. And I suppose the message has got to go out to the HR of Hiscox Insurance. You need to start looking for a new head of claims. I think this guy is going off in a different path. You won't be able to keep him any longer. You'll be gone, won't you, Brian? You'll be gone.
I get no comment on that. I love my job. I love my team. I'm there for at least the foreseeable future, but we'll see what happens.
They're not listening to this rubbish, Brian. You can say anything you like, as you will be saying anything you like now, because this is the part of the show called The Sermon on the Mic, when we're going to send you back in time to have a one-on-one with your younger self. And if you could go back in time and speak to young Brian, what age would you choose and what advice would you give? Well, we're going to find out, because I'm going to play the music, and when it fades, you're up. This is The Sermon on the Mic.
Here we go with the best bit of the show, the Sermon on the Mic, the Sermon on the Mic.
Brian, hey man. So you're just about 8 years old and you're going through some things, and I wanted to talk to you about it. You know, I know you put on quite a bit of weight over the past few years, and I know that you've gotten a lot of pressure about that, and that doesn't feel good. But I want to talk about why. You know, I don't want to tell you to just don't eat those things or get outside more or stop watching TV or whatever. You know all that. It's not about that. I want to talk to you about what you're feeling, because you are going through some things with what's happened in the family and the way that, you know, you feel about all that, or what you don't understand, what you've been put through. And you don't really have anyone to talk to about it. And I think that that's making you really sad inside. So I want you to get a chance to tell me, what are you feeling? What are you experiencing? And why does that matter to you? What are you worried about? And what do you think all of the changes that have been going on, what do you think that means to you? Because I think that you're feeling things about that and you're not getting a chance to do anything with it. And the only place you have to turn is that stack of Oreos or whatever other food is out there, because it feels good and it doesn't judge you. It's not making fun of you. It's not leaving the house. It's not making you feel like you may not have a place to sleep tomorrow night. It's just there and makes you feel good. So I want to talk about that and understand what's driving you underneath all that.
Brian, what's the number one best way that our audience can connect with you?
So they can go to doadaybook.com. And I link up I join up the dots, right, for every other way that they can find me. Social media, it's do a day book on all social media. There's a link to buy the book on every various store you want to buy it from: Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kindle, Nook, iBooks, whatever, Google Play. But doadaybook.com, you can find a link to everything there.
We will have all the links on the show notes. Brian, thank you so much for spending time with us today, joining up those dots. And please come back again when you've got more dots to join up, because I do believe that by joining up the dots and connecting our pasts, it's the best way to build our futures. Brian, thank you so much.
Thank you, David. That was great.
Wasn't he a great guy? Wasn't he? He's doing his job. He loves his job, but he also wants to do something else. And he's not burning all these bridges, but he's juggling it. I think that's a real honest episode. I really do, because you hear, I have some guests on the show that as they're talking, I think, really, I know you're saying this, but really, is this how it operates? He was totally real. He was totally transparent, I think is the word I'm trying to look for, that you can build something, a side hustle that grows into something before you're ready to transition. You don't actually have to burn all your bridges. You don't have to be Superman. You can have a moment over a veggie burger, which just, you look back on it and you go, that's a little bit stupid, but you know, that's what life is. That is what life is. So I hope you go over and buy Do a Day. I think that's going to be a great book to read. And quite simply, it's all down to mindset, and it's about doing every single day until the world notices, and leaving your failures behind, celebrating your successes, but taking your learnings with you. Thank you so much for listening to Join Up Dots, as always, and we'll see you again soon. Cheers. See ya.
David doesn't want you to become a faded version of the brilliant self you were once to become. So he's put together an amazing guide for you called the 8 Pieces of Advice that every successful entrepreneur practices, including the 2 that changed his life. Head over to joinupdots.com to download this amazing guide for free, and we'll see you tomorrow on Join Up Dots.